Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on the bottom of Daf Chaf Amud Bet, 14 lines from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. L'schud Yosha ben Diana, Yael bat Rivka, Menashe ben Asi. Today's Amud is also being learned. Le'ilui Nishmat Tzipora bat Yitzchak, also Le'ilui Nishmat Menashe ben Yaakov. Today's Amud is also sponsored. Le'ilui Nishmat Sadaf Simcha bat Faribat Hila Eden, and Avraham ben Esther, and also Le'ilui Nishmat Farzaneh Diana bat Victoria, that the Nishamot should have an aliyah. Amen. So we are at the very last part of the Mishnah on the Yutet Amud Bet. At the bottom of the Amud, we learned in the Mishnah a machloket Tanakama and Rabbi Meir. We didn't know who, and Rabbi Yehuda rather, we didn't know who the Tanakama is. Now the Gemara is going to discuss that. The Mishnah said that en mochrin lahem b'mchubar lekarka. You cannot sell to an idol worshipper in Eretz Israel b'mechubar lekarka. You can't sell them land. You cannot even sell them anything that is attached to the land, because that's also considered a chaniya bekarka. We mentioned that that's learned, one of the three things that's learned from the pasuk of lo tchonem lo titel lahem chaniya bekarka, that you cannot give them any foothold in the ground, and that is the source for not selling them anything that is mechubar lekarka, attached to the ground. The machloket was that Tanakama holds you can't sell them anything that's mechubar lekarka, but you could sell them after already is cut off. You want to sell them a tree, you could negotiate on the price, and then you could do the actual sale after you cut off the tree, then you could sell it. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He is more lenient. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, mocherhu al menad lakutz. You could sell it on condition that he is going to be cutting it off afterwards. Now says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, mochrin lahen ilan al menad lakutz. The first case of the Braita is you could sell to an Oved Kochavim a tree based on understanding and a tenai that he's going to cut it off. And then he cuts it off after the sale. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's exactly like what we learned in the Mishnah in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. So that's very much aligned. Rabbi Meir Omer, now we put a face to the Tanakama of the Mishnah in Yutet. Rabbi Meir Omer, en mochrina ketzusa. We only could sell them a tree that's already cut off. You cannot sell a tree hoping that after the sale he's going to cut it. That's already considered a problem. Second case of the Braita, shachat al menat laguz vegozez. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir Omer, en mochrina en ela gzuza. Shachat also is the same machloket. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you could sell it to them on condition that they're going to cut it off, and Rabbi Meir says no, you could only sell it after it's. Well, what's shachat? Shachat is a tvu'ah that is not ripened yet. It's produce that's not ready to be cut off. It's not completely ripe. So says the Braita, a third and final case, kama al menat liksor vekotzer. When you have a kama on condition, you're selling it mechubar lekarka, attached to the ground, but you're doing a conditional that the goy is going to, after the sale, cut it off. Then Rabbi Yehuda holds his mutar. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir Omer, en mochrin ela ktsura. Rabbi Meir says no, sorry, you could only sell it when it's already harvested. What is kama? Kama is the same thing as shachat. It's just completely ripened, right? It's a fully ripened and ready to be harvested produce. So two cases about produce, one case about ilan, about a tree. Three cases mentioned in the Braita, all three of them is the same. Rabbi Yehuda says you could sell on condition that they're going to afterwards cut it down. And Rabbi Meir says, sorry, you cannot do that. You could only sell something that's already talush, already cut off. You can never sell anything that's... Now, of course, be it that we're learning Gemara, the Gemara is going to ask, why do you need three cases? Just tell me one or two out of the three. Why do you have to say all three of them? It must be that's coming to teach you a chidush v'sricha. It's needed to be said all three cases. If the writer only would say ilan, b'hakama Rabbi Meir. we would think that only in this case of the ilan of the tree Rabbi Meir is mahmir, that you cannot sell it. You know why? Because you sell the ilan, the goy says, yeah, I'm going to cut it down. Right? And then, what does he lose if he doesn't cut it down? Nothing. The ilan goes bad when it's attached to the ground. It never goes bad. So he starts procrastinating. Oh, tomorrow I'll do it. Next week, my electric saw broke. My mother-in-law borrowed it. What happened? Like, who knows what's going to happen, right? And you don't want to spend the money to cut it down. So it becomes a problem, right? But when you are selling kama, you have a produce to sell, and you sold it. Now the goy is going to procrastinate? No, because if you leave it there, it's going to go bad. Once it ripens, it stops getting nourishment from the ground, and now it could rot, actually. If it rains on it, it will mold. It will get bad, right? Aside from the fact that you could get infestation, you could get all kinds of problems with a kama. So therefore, it would be needed to say both of them, because I would think that kama, produce, even Rabbi Meir would be mekel. He would say, no, sell it because we're not worried he's not going to come take it. He's going to come take it. So says the Gemara, Kevan de lo pasid, the tree does not go bad, and mashile, and therefore the goy is going to procrastinate and not do it on time. Aval hai, but the produce, the chimashile pasid, that if you wait, it will go bad. Ema modi le Rabbi Yehuda. I would have thought that he's going to be modeh to Rabbi Yehuda, he's going to agree with Rabbi Yehuda that you could be lenient, and therefore it needs to be said the case of kama as well. And reverse of it is also true. If I would only say the two cases of the kama and the tree, mishum de lo yadia shivchayu, it would have said is because you don't see the growth and the benefit in leaving the tree for another 2 weeks. Nothing is going to be added to the tree in 2 weeks, right? Also, kama, a fully ripened produce, when you leave it, nothing is going to be added to it. It grew to its full growth. But shahat, in 2 weeks, is going to be ripened. In 3 weeks, 1 month, you see them grow and become ripened, and you see the shibolet, the beautiful, the produce that's going to grow and become ripened. Of course, you see the color changes, the size changes, everything changes. So therefore, avar shachad de yadia shivchayhu emamodi le Rabbi Meir. I would have thought that Rabbi Yehuda, even who is normally mekel, he would agree with Rabbi Meir, because the goy would say, another month, and this is going to grow. And you see every day is different. So of course he's going to procrastinate. Who wants to cut off a produce that's not ready? So maybe even Rabbi Yehuda, who normally is mekel, I would have thought he's going to be mahmir, because we know for sure he says he's going to cut it down, but he's not going to cut it down. Why would he cut it down? It's not ready yet to be harvested. So Kamash Malan, the Sarichuta of the Gemara is that Rabbi Yehuda, who is mekel, he's even mekel in the case of shachat. That if the goy promises you, I'm going to cut it down, you could sell it to him and rely on the fact that he's going to cut it down. And if you only would say shachat, right? If you would only say the case of shachat, and you would say, wow, even there, Rabbi Yehuda is mekel, then I would also not know the koach of Rabbi Meir, because behakam Rabbi Meir, aval behanach ema modi le Rabbi Yehuda. I would have thought that Rabbi Meir, who is mahmir, he's only mahmir by shachat, because of course we're choshesh that the goy is not going to want to cut down shachat who is not ripened yet. But maybe even Rabbi Meir, who is so mahmir, is only mahmir by shachat, but he would agree with Rabbi Yehuda by a case of the tree, or by a case of produce especially, that once they are completely ripened and the goy promises, the poor goy that promises that he's going to cut it down, he's going to cut it down. maybe he would be agreeable and amendable to that, and therefore Kamash Malan that no, Rabbi Meir is mahmir even by tree and even by produce, even in a case that is going to go bad if he doesn't cut it down. So the goy has every reason to do what he said and come and cut it down. Still Rabbi Meir says you cannot sell anything b'mechubar lekarka. You only could sell it when it's cut down, when it's cut off and harvested, then you could do it. Sricha, therefore you need all three. Now we understand, Tosafot adds a little explanation to one case over here as well, but nevertheless we understand why we need every one of the three cases that the Braita brought. Amazing. Says the Gemara, Ibaya lehu, they asked in the Bit Midrash, Behema al menad lishchot mahu. How about, we said in the Mishnah that you can't sell behema to them, right? We had earlier on in Masechta, we had two different reasons. You're going to bring it for Avodah Zarah, you're going to work it on Shabbat. How about if the goy promises that it's not going to keep the behema, it's going to shecht it. It's got to have a barbecue, right? Thursday night mishmar, that's it. It's got to do. But he is not shechting it now. Al menad lishchot. He says, I promise I'm going to shecht it. What's the sad of she'ela? What's the question? The question is, says the Gemara, by all the three things that we mentioned, where is the plant or the tree found? On my land. I'm the owner of the land. I didn't sell you the land. It's still my land. So you know when somebody nudges you every 2 minutes, you get a text message from them, right? Question marks, emojis, so if he doesn't come to cut it down, he's gonna be, badgered by me and messaged by me and approached by me. At some point, he's gonna come cut it down. There's no not cutting it down. It's my land. But if I sell a behemah to him, he's gonna say, "Hacham, I'm gonna shecht it. Then he gives the money, takes the behemah. What are you going to be? You have any authority over him anymore? You don't even know where he is. So maybe that's more machmir, and maybe even Rabbi Yehuda in that case should agree with Rabbi Meir that you should not be allowed to sell a live behemah to him, even if he promises to shech. That's a very good question, right? The question is really revolving around Rabbi Yehuda. Would Rabbi Yehuda still say what he says in a case of sale of an animal to a goy that he promises to shecht it? Says the Gemara, Hatam tamamai shari Rabbi Yehuda de la virshute. Maybe over there in the case of the tree or the produce, Rabbi Yehuda is mekel because the goy doesn't have reshut over the land. It's not in his reshut. Velo matzi mashi lehu, and therefore he can't procrastinate that much. He can't wait that much. The Yid is going to be on his case. The Jew is going to be, pushing and pressing him every day, every moment. So therefore, he's going to come to cut it down. But over here, but behemah, once you sell it to him, it's in the shoot of the Oved Kochavim, and he could now just forget about the whole tenai, the whole condition, and not shecht it. And therefore, maybe Rabbi Yehuda also would be mahmir like Rabbi Meir, or dilma, or maybe lo shana. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. Maybe we always trust the goy says al menat lishchot. We say, okay, hazaku baruch, you could sell. Tashma, says the Gemara, we actually have a Braita that talks about this very case. Says the Gemara, the Tanya we learned in Braita, behema al menat lishchot. If you want to sell a behema to a goy al menat lishchot, he promises that he's going to be shechting it. Says the Gemara, you could shochet divrei Rabbi Yehuda. You could sell a behema al menat lishchot v'shochet. And then after the sale, the goy will shecht it. You don't have to shecht it before the sale. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, en mochrin lo el ashchuta. You only let the behema out of your house over its dead body, right? You can't let it go alive. That's Rabbi Meir. So you see that even in the case of that's a tremendous chidush in the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda is consistent. Doesn't make a difference if it's a kama, which is the least chidush, right? That's already ready. That he says you could trust the goy. Even a tree, he says you could. Even shachat, that's not prepared. Still, and even a behemah that's not going to be in your reshut. Still, Rabbi Yehuda says al menat lishchot v'shohet is fine. Says the Mishnah. And usually Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, the klal psak is Rabbi Meir v'chavero halacha kechavero. But the other time, the other klal that we have is halacha is always like stam mishnah, right? So those Rabbi Meirs, the halacha would be like him, the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi made those a stam mishnah. Halacha is like stam mishnah usually, right? So says the new mishnah. Ein maskirin lahem batim be'eretz Yisrael. Now it's not only selling land in Eretz Yisrael to Oved Kochavim, that's a problem. But even renting out land is a problem because we're worried that if you rent, you're going to also come to sell. What's the difference? Right? I've been renting this house out for 20 years. The goy has been living there. So Mali living there paying rent, Mali living there paying 50 years of rent all at one shot, right? That's a very hoshesh, so therefore we don't let it happen. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss an additional problem for renting houses to Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael. What's the other issue? We had this earlier on in the Masechta when we brought this Mishnah to discuss it, that if the goy brings Avodah Zarah to your house and it's only rented, right? The pasuk says, "Lo tavi to'eva el betecha." Do not bring abomination into your house. And when you rent, we mentioned schirut is not like kinyan liyomeh necessarily, and therefore, whose house it is? It's still my house. So I am renting it to someone knowing that he's going to bring his getchka, his avodah zarah, his idol there. That's a problem, because I will be in violation of lo tavi to'eva el betecha. So therefore, all of this that we're discussing of the Avodah Zarah is maybe for office or for storage. That's what we're talking about. But even for that, the Mishnah says you can't do it because of the Gezerah. Maybe you're going to come to sell. So now let's learn. There are going to be three different details in the Mishnah. One is in Eretz Yisrael, one is in Syria, and the other one is in Chutz La'aretz. Now, what's the... we love Syrians, right? But it's not because we love Syrians that's an issue. The issue is because David HaMelech captured the area of Syria, right? That's not necessarily what's called Syria. Nowadays, it's a little different. And it was Kibush Yahid. That means it was not Al Pia Dibur. It's not that Hashem told him, go do it. And it was not with 600,000. It was not the way a kibush rabim would be, so therefore it's called kibush yahid. The question is, a kibush yahid, what level of kedusha? He added it to Eretz Yisrael. So Eretz Yisrael in the time of David HaMelech was a massive land, including the entire boundaries of Syria, right? So what is that is exactly considered? You give maaser, fine, but is it really considered part of Eretz Yisrael or not? That's questionable. So therefore, Syria is like a middle ground over here that is right next to Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, and it used to be part of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, we're more concerned about Syria, if you allow things in Syria, that's going to be mixed up with Eretz Yisrael than we are if you do something in Los Angeles, which is far away, and no one would put Eretz Yisrael and Los Angeles together. So says the Mishnah. You cannot rent out a house to an Oved Kochavim, an idol-worshipping individual in Eretz Yisrael. And of course you can't rent out sadot, fields. What's the en sarich lomar? Why is it a bigger isur to rent out a field to a Oved Kochavim in Eretz Yisrael? Because there are two isurim there. There's the isur of selling land to the Lot Honem, but there's also the Isur of being mebatil the land from Ma'asirot, right? If a Jew has it, then you have the mitzvah tuliyot ba'aris and the mitzvah of Ma'asirot. If you give it to Oved Kochavim, you are mafkia the land, you are nullifying the thing of Ma'asirot that would have been there. So therefore, there are two Isurim, two problems there, and that's why the Mishnah says it goes without saying. Goes without saying that Sadot is a problem, right? So says the Mishnah, Ubesuria, in Syria, Maskirin Lahem is one level lower. Maskirin Lahem, Batim, Avalo Sadot. Right? So the levels are the following. There is Sechirut of Bayit. There is Sechirut of Sadeh. There is Mechira of Bayit, and there is Mechira of Sadeh. There's 4 different levels of Chumrah, right? So you'll see how the Machloket in the Mishnayot plays out with all these 4 elements. So the first Shita in the Mishnah holds in Eretz Yisrael nothing. You can't even rent a house, which is the lowest level, right? You can't. In Syria, you could do one level more mekel, so you could rent a house, but not a sadeh, chas v'shalom, right? That's the first shita in the Mishnah. Ubechutz la'aretz, and outside Syria and Eretz Yisrael, mochrin lahem batim, you can be mekel one level more. That means not just you could be maskir batim, you could even sell a bayit. But sadot you cannot sell. Sadeh you could only rent in Chutz La'aretz. Now, what's the chashash over here? As we mentioned before, the chashash is that you're going to end up selling a house in Eretz Yisrael. That's what the chashash is, right? Avlot tehonim. Now, of course, there's an isur of being mebatel the land from Masarot, also by a field. The question is, when are we and when are we not choshesh concerned about the comparison in the mind of people? So Syria is mamash like one category in people's mind with Eretz Yisrael, so it's very close to home, and we are more mahmir. So we say, in the first shita in the Mishnah, we say, well, in Syria, in Eretz Yisrael, you cannot even rent because people are going to mix up and come to sell. Big problem. Syria, the house you could rent, it's fine, because the house is not going to get mixed up. Renting a house already, even selling a house in Syria would be a gezerah. So renting a house is already gezerah, that's too much. But renting a sadeh, that's 2 isurim, that's a bigger thing. So that's all part of one gezerah. When they made the gezerah of not renting a land, a field, they included Syria in it as well. It's all one gezerah. But Chutz La'aretz is not a big deal. Selling is not going to become, even selling a house is not going to get mixed up with selling a house in Eretz Yisrael. But still, you're mahmir for selling a field, because fields are very sensitive. Because it has 2 isurim, you're always more mahmir on fields. So even in Chutz La'aretz, which is not going to be really mistaken, it's the worry, the concern of it getting mixed up with Eretz Yisrael is very minute. That minute chance we're going to be mahmir for selling a land in Eretz Yisrael.
Robert, what do we do with the issue of Goy bringing Avodah Zarah to your home in Chutz La'aretz? Because still you own it and he's bringing Avodah Zarah.
We're going to be discussing that, right? Well, I just jumped the gun to mention that the Mishnah does not mean what it says, Maskirim Batim, for living purposes. It means, for storage, for other things, which the Gemara is going to get to. So says the Mishnah. That's the first shita in the Mishnah. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's Rabbi Meir's shita. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with that. Rabbi Yossi says, no. Everything is one level more lenient than what Rabbi Meir said. Rabbi Meir is too mahmir. And everything is one step more lenient than Rabbi Meir. So let's go through it. Says Rabbi Yossi, Ba'eres Yisrael maskirin la'hem batim. You could rent houses in Eretz Israel, but chas v'shalom lo sadot. You cannot rent even sadot. And of course, you cannot sell any of them. You can't sell houses, you can't sell sadot. That's pashut. Ube Surya, in Syria, mochrin batiyim. You could already be one level more mekel. So here you could even sell houses, but you can't, of course, sell field, but you could rent it. Umaskirin sadot. Everything is exactly one level more lenient. In outside of Syria and Eretz Israel, mochrin elu ve'elu. You could do whatever you want. That's not going to be mixed up with anything. Not only you could sell batim, but you could even sell sadot. So says the Gemara, Af b'makom she'amru laskir. Now the Mishnah finishes saying what we mentioned, that even when they said that you could be renting the house to an Oved Avodah Zarah, to an idol-worshipping individual, lo ve'bet dira amru, they didn't say that for residential purposes, because of what we mentioned. Because the Oved Kochavim is going to bring in Avodat Kochavim. And that's a problem of lo tavi ta'eva el betecha. Cannot bring abomination Avodah Zarah into your house, and it's still considered your house. You can't do that. Ubechol makom lo yaskir lo ed hamerchas. And then there is a Hilchot Shabbat problem also. You can never rent your public bathhouse to a goy, because a public bathhouse is always called on the name of the owner, right? This is so-and-so's bathhouse, right? So nobody cares if you rented it technically to a goy, and a goy is running it. This still is your bathhouse, right? So Jews pass by on Shabbat and say the chimney is working, right? So then what do they say? They say, oh, wait a second. The goyim are heating up water over here, but the goyim are working for who? For this Jew. So it must be that he told the goyim to work on Shabbat. Oy vavoy, he is over on the Isur of Amira La'akum on Shabbat. He told the goyim to work. Can you tell goy to do something for you on Shabbat that he can't do? You can't do that. Anything that's asur for a Jew to do, it's asur for him to tell the goy to do. Unless there's a mutter way of doing it, right? That's a different story. But you can't tell him to heat up water and run a Beit HaMerchas on Shabbat, chas v'shalom. So it says the Mishnah, Ubechol makom lo yaskir lo et HaMerchas, doesn't make a difference in Eretz Yisrael, chutz Syria doesn't make a difference. You cannot rent the Beit HaMerchas to him, because it still is considered on your name, mipeneh shehu nikra al shemo, and as Rashi explains over here, when somebody, the onlooker, sees that on Shabbat they are heating it up, what does he think? He says, Omer Shabalanim Sheluchin Shel Yisrael Hen. He thinks that the people working on the bathhouse are the Shluchim, the agents of the Yid, and the Yid has been over on Amira La'akum on Shabbat, which is a problem. So that's that. Now the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. Let's just start the first line, the first piece here. Mai en sarich lomar sadot. The Mishnah says in Eretz Yisrael you cannot rent the house. That's how we start a Shita of Rabbi Meir, and goes without saying that you can't rent sadot, fields. What does it mean? Goes without saying. Why is it without saying? Why is it a bigger isur to rent out or sell fields than it is to do the houses? So says the Gemara, Ilema mishum de itbatarti chada chayrat karka vechada deka mafka lemimaser. If you want to say it's because it has two isurim, one is lo techonim, that you're giving a foothold in the land to them, and the other one is because you are nullifying the land from being chayav v'maaser. Iachi batim nami. If that's the case, Bayit also, ikatarti, chada chanayat karka. The house also has two. One is that you're giving them a foothold in the ground, in the land of Eretz Yisrael. And the second one is, now the house is not going to have mezuzah. If a Yid would be living there, the house would have mezuzah. But now that the Goy is living there, hopefully the house is not going to have mezuzah. But you were mafkia the house from having mezuzah. And that's a problem. What's the simple answer to that? Anyone that has learned Psachim, Daf Dalet, Mitziyah, Daf Kuf Aleph, there's a fundamental difference. The difference is, mezuzah is chovat hadar. If a Jew owns a house, but the house is just sitting there, not doing anything, sitting there, empty, vacant, do you have to put mezuzah on it? It says mezuzot betecha ubisharecha, right? It's your house. But no, the answer is you're patur, because mezuzah is chovat hadar. The person that lives there has the chiyuv of putting mezuzah. It's an obligation that comes only with living in a place. So before you live there is no obligation. So just because I own this land, this house in Eretz Yisrael, doesn't mean that I have to put mezuzah on it. It's not that he has a chiyuv of mezuzah, and now by renting it to a goy, I was mafkia, I took away the chiyuv of mezuzah. No, there was no chiyuv of mezuzah. If I would move in, they will become. It's a very interesting tshuva from Rabbi Akiva Eger in his tshuvot in Siman, I think Tet it is, and there's later on in Nun Tet. He has a massive chidush. He holds that whenever you leave your house, right, you're no longer living there. Let's imagine you go for 2 days vacation, right? So you're not living there. So for those 2 days, is the house chayav b'mezuzah? No, not chayav b'mezuzah. So says Rabbi Kiveger, when you come back, you should take off the mezuzah and put it back with the bracha again, because now you became chayav b'mezuzah the house, right? Then he's very bothered with this and says at the end of the tshuva, he says later on he saw that Maran Hida asks and answers this question. It's not a problem necessarily, but that to that degree he goes as far as saying that maybe potentially a person would be, because it's chovat hadar, is only chiyuv when you live there, not just by owning a house or having your furniture even there. That's not what's koveya, the chiyuv, and that's what the Gemara answers over here before the 2 dots. Take a look at the Gemara. It says, Amar Rav Mesharshia mezuzah chovat hadarhu. Mezuzah is not a chiyuv on the land, but rather it is a chiyuv on the person who is living and dwelling in their house at the time that they live. So therefore, by you renting it to a goy, you're not mafkia anything from the house, because there is no chiyuv on the house per se, and therefore you will be good to go, you will be fine. Bezrat Hashem, we will continue this in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.